All right, good morning, everybody. So, for today, what I'd like for us to do is to go over a Unit 4 question. As I said, it is very common for there to be a Unit 5 question in the long FRQ section. So with that, the best thing we can do is practice, right? Oh yeah, good morning, dudes and dudettes. One take. Everybody knows the rule. With that, what I'd like for you to do is to draw out everything. That means I would want you to, on a piece of paper on your iPad, to go through, read this question, and actually go through and draw it out. Because remember, if you don't practice like you play, you're going to play bad. And if you don't practice the way we want to do our test, then you're not going to do too well on your test. So the first thing you guys are going to do is you're going to have to draw a graph. You're going to have to answer about 4 questions. And with that, make sure to write out full sentences and use economic language. All right? That is an issue I've seen often when students are practicing, is that they just say, blah, 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 deadweight loss blank. Use economic language, right? Say deadweight loss is in this location because of blank, 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 right? Say full sentences and use economic language. So now I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to have you guys pause the video, take as much time as you need, and then reopen the video as I go through the answers. All right, pause your video. Okay, so good morning. Hope everybody has all your answers are correct. Make sure, again, practice like you play. So first thing we need to do is read through the question. So when we read through this question, the first thing we need to see is we need to always be underlining or highlighting or circling or whatever. I understand now the test is online, it has the highlight function, but obviously with this question, you have a piece of paper. You can always just jot down notes. But when it says profit maximizing firm, the only producer means one producer means monopoly, right? Mono meaning one, monopoly. And it is earning a negative economic profit. So double this annoying negative, instead of just saying loss, a negative profit is a loss. So you are going to be drawing a graph that looks a little bit like this, right? You're going to be drawing a graph that looks a little bit like this. You're going to be drawing a graph where the ATC is above. You need to label those points, right? It says profit maximizing quantity labeled QM. So we're going to have a QM down here. And then we need to label our profit maximizing price PM, right? Don't forget to label. And then you're going to have to be showing the correct location of ATC. It does not matter where you put it or how high or how low. You don't need to label any ... dots. You just put it wherever you need to put. I just put the little ... dots because habit. And then you need to shade your deadweight loss. Deadweight loss is always going to be the distance between socially efficient or allocate efficiently and your current quantity. So it makes a little triangle right there, right? I still labeled allocate efficiently for the test. Don't do that because you don't need to, right? Don't do things you don't need to do, okay? Okay, so this is what a correct graph would be looking like. Make sure to fully write out your labels. As me, you want to do quantity and you want to label out price, right? Don't just put Q and P. Also, remember it's price cost. It's not just price, okay? So please make sure that you have something along these lines. Then, part B. Suppose the government requires Voda reservoir to produce the socially optimal quantity of bottled waters. In your graph part A, show the socially optimal quantity of bottle of waters as QS. So as we know, allocate efficiently is our socially optimal. So you're going to do, and you're going to put QS right there. So right off to the right, equal location to allocate efficiently is going to be our QS. Part C. Suppose instead the government grants a per unit subsidy. A subsidy is where the government gives money to a business to get us closer or hopefully equal to a allocate efficiently or socially optimal location. What will happen to the profit maximizing quantity of bottled water? This time you need to explain. So when it says explain, that means you need to write out full sentences, and when you need to write out full sentences, you need to use economic language. Annoyingly, with this one, you need some economic language. So the way I would word it is to try to focus on in my head, I go cost, because a subsidy is minimizing my cost. So you would say per unit subsidy decreases the firm's marginal cost, because per unit will impact our marginal costs, which is going to shift the MC down, right? And ends up creating a higher quantity. So if we were to shift the MC curve this way, we then are going to be able to produce at a different quantity. So right now we produce at this quantity here. If we were to shift MC over, we now are producing at a completely different quantity. I drew that way too far over, but concept applies. If you shift MC downward or to the right, the overall ending result is that you actually produce at a higher quantity, because we still always produce where MR equals MC. So we're still going to be producing here. So quantity is there. Obviously, I need to shift it farther over to be at the actually socially optimal, but my graph would not look very cool because the MC would be way too far down. That's why they don't make you actually draw out the new MC, because they know people drawing this graph is not going to draw it perfectly. So you just need to explain it, but you have to explain it in economic terms, meaning you have to say, to get this point right, you'd have to say MC shifts to the right or down, and you have to say the per unit subsidy decreases the marginal costs, right? You have to say that somewhere, and then ending in a greater quantity. So that's the answer. Next, suppose instead the government grants a per unit subsidy. We did that one, LOL. Suppose a new producers have entered the bottled water market. I can actually get rid of this now. We don't need it anymore, because they've now shifted from unit 4 to a slightly different perspective. They're still focusing on that elastic aspect of it. So, suppose new producers have entered bottled water market. Voda Reservoir continues to operate in the bottled water market. Will the demand for Voda Reservoir bottled water become more elastic, less elastic, or stay the same? Again, in this scenario, we already know stay the same doesn't make sense, because something has changed to our market. If something has changed to our market, we're changing the market. It doesn't stay the same. So it has to be more or less. And then the question can now become, well, if there's more competition, what does that mean for the demand of our bottles of water? And it becomes more elastic. The reason is because when more people enter that market, we produce at a lower quantity. If we produce at a lower quantity, if there's only 100 water bottles to sell, we currently sold 100 of that quantity, right? Then, if a new person comes in and they are relatively efficient, they're probably going to take 30, 40, 50%. So they're going to be taking nearly half that market, right? We went from 1 to 2 producers. That means we produce less quantity. So we need to be more flexible with our pricing. We need to be more flexible with our quantity. So we are becoming more elastic, essentially. The changes of quantity are going to be drastically changing our price, and vice versa. That's what elasticity essentially means. Next is going to be Unit 5 question. This is where the fun part comes in. I will be honest with you. Most likely is going to be one of those questions that minimally people are going to be getting right. Whenever you see in a AP exam where they start to mix together, I don't want to say hard concepts, but I want to say concepts that don't naturally blend. So a Unit 4 and Unit 5 question, a Unit 6 and Unit 5 question, a Unit 6 with a Unit 3, something along those lines where they're mixing concepts together that aren't from the same unit, or obviously Unit 3 to Unit 4 is a pretty simple jump. Lots of people just makes mistakes. And I think it's because naturally Unit 5 is a more confusing concept, because teachers are usually running out of time. They don't have enough time to teach the content, and then the students get confused, as well as it is a weirder unit. So with that, we are now moving to a labor market. We are leaving the firm and we're going to the labor market, and we're in a perfectly competitive labor market. So we are a monopoly with a perfectly competitive labor market. Doesn't really make a lot of sense in your head. So if the demand for bottled waters increase, what will happen to Voda Reserve's demand for labor? If we're in perfectly competitive, we're just in a simple supply and demand. And if we're in a simple supply and demand, just think of it in a simple supply and demand. Voda's reserves demand for labor increases, and increases the demand for bottled water, increases the price and marginal revenue of the bottle of water, increasing the marginal revenue per product of labor. Essentially saying that if we sell more bottles of water and people want more bottles of water, we are going to have to hire more workers. So the demand for labor is connected to the demand for a bottle of water. We can't produce the same amount of bottle of waters if we don't have enough workers to produce those bottles of water in the perfectly competitive labor market. The government implements a new regulation that increases the minimum age required for workers to be employed for a bottled water factory. What will happen to the market wage in the short run? The market wage is going to increase because now we have a lower quantity of workers. Because we have a lower quantity or a lower supply of workers, supply shift left. If supply shift left, price goes up. So naturally, just use your little supply and demand, do that inside your head, shift things around, and it's pretty easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Obviously, in a test, you can jot things down, but I would suggest just sticking with your fingers because your fingers are always there, right? And you can easily, quickly do that on a test. Go through it in the perfectly competitive labor market. Overall, I would say, realistically, this question is if you get part A right, you could probably get part B right. I would say part C, naturally, a lot of students are going to get wrong due to the wording. And then part D and E, I say, are a coin flip. Either because D is a coin flip because we know stay the same doesn't really make sense. It's a 50-50. You just have to explain it. That's going to be a little hard. Actually, you don't have to explain it. There's no explain. Yeah, D should be easy. It's a 50-50. You just pick one or the other and just go with it. While E is going to be now a coin flip. Either you get it inside your head or you don't, and that's going to be the defining factor. Is if you can get E right and if you can get C right, you're for sure getting a 5 on that FRQ portion, or a 10 out of 10, or 8 out of 10, or whatever you want to say. So overall, generally speaking, I'd say the hardest part of this question is going to be part E, but don't worry. Just because it's hard doesn't mean you have to get it right. Because it's hard, many people are not going to get that right. And because many people are not going to get that right, guess what? You don't have to get that right as well. Take your best guess, go through the supply and demand, work your way through it. All right. Always remember, have a great rest of your day. Sleep well, eat well, have fun.